So we've already learned a little bit about how the web works, but I just want to sort of reinforce that and go over it and be just a little bit more thorough and show you just a little bit more information about how the web works and give you a nice visual so that you can see it, because we didn't get that before. So we already understand intuitively, like we went over, how the web works. We make a request, hey, show me this web page. A web server, that request goes to the web server, and then a web server responds and says, okay, here's your HTML document. And then your web browser renders that and shows you the web page, right? But for all of that to happen, there's some other interesting things going on. So let's take a look at that. So the first thing to know is that the web uses a client-server architecture. And that's just the terminology we use to talk about it. So when you hear that, you know what that means. And basically, these computers here are all the clients, and they make requests to the server. And this is a web server, and then the server, responds to the clients and fulfills the requests or denies them, And it looks like just a few computers there, but I just wanted to iterate the fact that there's 3.5 billion people online. And it's interesting to look at the statistics where the majority of them are. Asia, North America, Europe, right? You might want to pause the video and just kind of look at that. It's kind of fun just to think, oh, wow, the vast majority of users are here or there or whatever. All right, so it's just another thing that's really good to know, and I already said this before, but I just want to reinforce it, is that clients and servers are both just computers. So when I first started, I thought servers were like special and you had to go buy a server. A server is just a computer running special software, a certain kind of software. It's usually a more robust and powerful computer, but it's just a computer. So clients and servers are just computers. And this is how the request response pattern works. Client makes a request, and then the server responds, and then termination, right? So it's a stateless environment. It's not like you make a phone call and the line stays open, right? The request goes over, the response comes back, that's it. End of communication. And then if you want to make another request, you make another request, you get another response, and then that's it. Your line with that computer, generally speaking, at the basic level, is done, is cut. So when that request goes over, there'll be a request method, right? And it'll say, hey, get a certain page for me using this, version of HTTP, version HTTP 1.1. And then the server responds, saying, okay, well, here's your response and everything is okay. HTTP status 200. And then this request might go over with the method of post. And the post method is like I'm posting some data to the server. So, you post and then the server might respond, hey, 401 unauthorized. So this information is in the header of the request and the response, right? Like, this information like 401 unauthorized or 200 okay, or get at this URL or post to this URL. That's in the header. And then there's going to be a body of the request or the response. So I just want you to get this concept here that, okay, it's a client-server architecture. The request goes over, the response comes back, and then, at the level we're starting out, then that's it. The connection is stopped, and there's no longer any connection. And we call that a stateless environment. So, boom, that's it. Our session is done, right? And when the request goes over and the response comes back, there is a header and a body, both to the request and to the response. Okay, so the header will hold things like this information right here or this information right there. And then the body would be the payload. We talk about that as the payload. And the payload is like the web page, the HTML, the CSS, or the form data, which you are posting. That would be the payload. And so you can see this in action if, again, we go into Developer Tools. So we'll go to Google Chrome, Developer Tools, the Network tab, and we're going to make a request, and then we're going to click on the response to see info. I have to look around like that because my microphone is right there, blocks the lower part of my screen. So let's take a look at that, and I'm going to do Control T, as in tab, Control T to go into a new tab, and we could go to reddit.com. But before I hit enter, I'll hold down Control Shift I, and that'll bring up Developer Tools, right? And I'm going to go to the Network tab, and where's my mouse? It is right there. And cool. Now we're ready. And I'm going to hit enter up here and go to reddit.com. And you'll see a whole bunch of stuff. And then I could just hit stop. I don't want to see anymore. And I could come back up to the top and I could see, okay, Reddit 307 stats code, internal redirect, and then 200. Everything is okay. And I could double click that, right? That one sort of back and forth. And I could see some of this stuff in here. I could see that the method was get. I could see the status code was 200 okay. And I could see a lot of the other headers, the response headers, the request headers right here. So we're seeing that exact thing right here, the header, right? We could see the request headers coming from my computer. And we could see that's the request headers right there. And we could see the response headers coming from the server. And then the payload would have been all of this stuff right here, all of the HTML. So that's a little bit about how the web works. And I know that was like a quick drive through the countryside, and I'm just kind of pointing things out. You don't have to be an expert with where everything's at. I'm just getting you familiarized with the lay of the land here. And that lay of the land is that we have a client-server architecture, and that when requests go over and come back, that's it. Then that is done. And then if we want to make another request, it goes over and comes back, and then we're done, right? And then when we do that, we have information each time, either when we're making the request, the client makes a request to the server, or the server responds to the client. Both ways, we have a header and a body. And we could go see the header and the different information that's in the header. Like here's the response header and there's the request header. And we could go see, and then the body is the payload. So that's just some of the terminology. Mostly you don't use any of this with creating websites, right? Only when you start to get into performance and only when you start to get into like server-side programming and like that'd be like the third or fourth class do you really start to get into this stuff more. But I just want to introduce you to it because it's good to know. And as you come across some of the concepts, you'll have some understanding of them.